Welcome to the Love Books Hate Reading podcast.
Oh.
Today we're diving into Kristin Hanna's
Okay.
The Women,
Yeah.
a novel that takes us right into the heart of the Vietnam War, but through the eyes of the women who served. I'm really excited to unpack this one with you.
It's a unique perspective, that's for sure. The Women doesn't just tell a war story.
Right.
It tells a human story.
Yeah.
And Hannah really brings to life the experiences of these women, particularly the nurses, in a way that's rarely seen.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's not your typical war novel.
Right.
We meet Frankie McGrath, this young woman from a very privileged background on Coronado Island. But when her brother dies in Vietnam, she makes this huge decision to enlist as an Army nurse. I mean, talk about a complete 180.
It's a decision that really throws you into the deep end with Frankie. You know, she goes from this life of almost carefree ease to the gritty, brutal reality of war as a surgical nurse. Hannah doesn't hold back on the details, and you really feel the weight of what Frankie's facing.
And it's not just the physical challenges, right? I mean, there's the emotional toll, the trauma of witnessing so much suffering.
Yeah.
But then there's also this incredible camaraderie that develops between Frankie and the other nurses.
Oh, yeah.
Barb and Ethel.
Yeah.
They become like a family supporting each other through the unimaginable.
Absolutely. That bond, that sense of sisterhood is so central to the novel. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, human connection can be a source of immense strength.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the power of those bonds, especially in situations where everything else feels like it's falling apart.
It really makes you appreciate the strengths these women had.
Yeah.
Not just to endure the war itself,
Right.
but to support each other through it. And then, of course, there's the love story.
Oh.
Frankie finds herself drawn to Rye Walsh, her brother's best friend.
Okay.
But she also gets involved with Jamie, you know, a married surgeon.
Yeah.
It's complicated,
Yeah.
to say the least.
The relationships add this whole other dimension to Frankie's character.
Right.
They show that even in the midst of war, these deep human needs for love and connection don't just disappear.
Yeah.
And the tragedy of Rye's presumed death,
Right.
which we find out later is not actually the case,
Right.
becomes a real turning point for Frankie. The grief and the sense of loss are just overwhelming.
It really throws Frankie's world into a tailspin.
Yeah.
And then she comes home from Vietnam expecting, I don't know, some sort of recognition. But instead, she's met with indifference.
Oh, wow.
It's like society has no place for female veterans.
Right.
Their sacrifices just invisible in this culture that's so focused on the male experience of war.
It's a stark contrast, and Hannah doesn't let you shy away from it.
Yeah.
Here you have Frankie, who's gone through hell and back, and nobody seems to care.
Okay.
It really forces you to consider how differently men and women were treated after Vietnam.
Right.
And how deeply ingrained those societal expectations were.
Right.
Yeah.
She's carrying this immense weight of trauma.
Yeah.
And it feels like nobody even sees it. It's no wonder she struggles with PTSD and this feeling of complete alienation.
And it's so important to remember that Frankie's story is just one of many.
Yeah.
Countless women who served in Vietnam faced similar challenges when they returned home. Their stories were often silenced or ignored.
Before we continue with Frankie's journey and see how she navigates this new reality,
Okay.
I want to remind you to like this episode and subscribe to Love Books Hate Reading for more insightful book discussions. Now back to Frankie. She's battling PTSD, feeling lost and completely alone.
Wow.
And then out of nowhere comes this bombshell.
Wow.
Rye, the love of her life, is alive.
Oh my gosh.
But of course there's a catch.
It's a twist that throws you for a loop, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly everything you thought you knew about Frankie's story shifts. And the revelation that Rye was married and had a child while he was presumed dead adds a whole new layer of complexity to their relationship. Right. You can't help but feel for Frankie the mix of emotion she must be going through. Relief, betrayal, maybe even a sense of being robbed of her grief.
It's definitely an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And this revelation sends Frankie into a downward spiral. She starts using substances to numb the pain, which eventually leads to an accidental overdose.
Wow.
It's a really dark period for her.
Yeah.
But it's also what ultimately forces her to confront her demons.
It's almost like hitting rock bottom becomes a catalyst for change.
Yeah.
The overdose leads to Frankie's PTSD diagnosis. And that's really the start of her journey toward healing. It makes you think about how sometimes the hardest moments can be the ones that push us toward real growth and recovery.
It's definitely a turning point.
Yeah.
Frankie decides to make a fresh start and relocates to Montana, where she establishes the Last Best Place, a sanctuary specifically for female Vietnam veterans.
Okay.
It's incredible, really, how she channels her pain into creating this space where other women can heal and find community.
It's a powerful statement, and it makes you realize that Frankie's journey isn't just about her individual healing.
Right.
It's about creating a space for others who've been through similar experiences,
Yeah.
a space where they can feel seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
It's about transforming personal pain into collective strength.
And that brings us to a crucial point in Frankie's journey.
Okay.
The Vietnam War Memorial unveiling in 1982.
It's a huge moment, right?
Yeah.
This national reckoning where the country finally starts to acknowledge the sacrifices made during the Vietnam War, and that includes the women who served.
Right.
It's almost like a collective exhale, a recognition of the profound impact this war had on so many lives.
It's a turning point for Frankie, too.
Yeah.
She reunites with Jamie, who is now divorced and dealing with his own injuries from the war.
Their reunion is filled with so much unspoken history, and it offers a glimmer of hope for both of them. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, there's a possibility for closure, forgiveness, and even a second chance at happiness.
It's a beautiful and hopeful note to end this part of Frankie's story on.
Yeah.
We'll pick up with the rest of her story in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But before we do, what are your thoughts on Frankie's journey so far? What stands out to you the most?
Frankie's resilience is remarkable, you know?
Right.
Despite the trauma and the societal hurdles, she chooses to create a space for healing, not just for herself, but for other women who served. That speaks volumes about her character.
Absolutely. And that sense of purpose she finds in establishing the last best place.
Yeah.
It really highlights one of the core themes of the novel.
Okay.
Female empowerment. We see these women defying expectations, pushing back against societal norms, and ultimately finding strength in each other.
It makes you consider how the book challenges traditional gender roles, especially during a time when those roles were so rigidly defined.
Yeah.
Think about it. Frankie faces unimaginable horrors, and then comes home to a society that barely acknowledges her service, yet she still manages to carve her own path to create something meaningful out of her experience.
And it's not just Frankie. You see that strength in Barb and Ethel, too. They're all dealing with their own demons. But they find a way to support each other, to build each other up. It's a powerful testament to the enduring strength of female friendships.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that ties into another key theme that Hannah explores: trauma and healing.
Right.
The novel doesn't shy away from the raw reality of PTSD and how it impacts Frankie's life, her relationships, even her sense of self.
It's a really honest portrayal of the invisible wounds that so many veterans carry.
Right.
Wounds that often go unnoticed and unaddressed. It makes you think about the long-lasting effects of war, how they ripple out and touch every aspect of a person's life.
Exactly. But the book also offers a sense of hope.
Yeah.
Frankie's journey toward healing, though challenging, shows that recovery is possible. And her creation of the last best place underscores the power of community in overcoming trauma.
That idea of finding a support system, a place where you feel understood and accepted, it's so crucial.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we don't have to face our challenges alone, that there's strength in shared experience.
And the novel doesn't just focus on individual healing. It also shines a light on the social injustices faced by female veterans. The lack of recognition for their service, the challenges they faced reintegrating into civilian life, it's all laid bare.
It really forces you to confront the societal disregard these women experienced, how their contributions were often overlooked or minimized simply because of their gender. It makes you question those deeply ingrained societal expectations and how they shape the lives of those who served.
It's a powerful indictment of those injustices.
Right.
And it adds a whole other layer of depth to the novel. And what's really striking is how Hannah weaves all these things together with a rich historical context.
Yes. The novel captures the essence of the Vietnam War era.
Right.
The cultural shifts, the political turmoil, the societal divisions.
It's not just a story about war. It's a story about the people who lived through it. their hopes, their fears, their dreams, and their struggles.
It's like a window into a pivotal moment in American history.
Yeah.
And how it impacted individuals and families. It makes you think about the ripple effects of historical events, how they shape our present, and continue to influence our understanding of the past.
And through it all, Hannah never loses sight of the human element.
Right.
She creates these characters that feel so real, so relatable. You can't help but be drawn into their stories.
Her writing is so evocative, so emotionally resonant. You feel Frankie's pain, you root for her triumphs, you get invested in her journey. And it's not just Frankie.
Right.
The supporting characters are equally well developed.
Yeah.
They all have their own unique stories, their own struggles and moments of grace.
It's that attention to detail, that nuanced portrayal of human experience that makes The Women such a compelling and memorable read.
It's a book that stays with you, that prompts you to think about bigger questions,
Right.
like society and the human condition.
And it leaves you with a sense of hope, a belief in the resilience of the human spirit and the power of finding connection and purpose even in the face of adversity.
Yeah.
What's fascinating is that The Women doesn't offer easy answers or simple solutions.
Right.
It presents these complex issues, these messy human experiences, and invites you to grapple with them, to draw your own conclusions.
It's a book that sparks conversation, that challenges your perspective, that encourages you to think critically and empathetically about the world around you.
Right.
What are your thoughts on how Hannah uses the historical context of the Vietnam War to explore these larger themes?
Yeah, it's amazing how she does that.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how those individual experiences reflect these larger societal shifts and historical events.
Yeah, it's like Hannah saying that you can't understand history without understanding the individual stories of those who lived through it.
Yeah.
And she does such a brilliant job of bringing those stories to life. The characters feel so real, so relatable. You find yourself invested in their journeys, their struggles, their triumphs.
Her characters are definitely one of the strongest aspects of the novel.
Yeah.
She doesn't shy away from their flaws or their complexities.
Right.
They make mistakes, they struggle with their demons, but ultimately they find a way to move forward, to find healing and redemption.
And that's what makes this story so resonant.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we're all human. We all make mistakes, but we also all have the capacity for growth and change.
Exactly. And The Women ultimately offers a message of hope, a belief in the resilience of the human spirit.
Yeah.
And the power of connection. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's always light to be found, strength to be drawn from, and love to be shared.
This deep dive has been such an incredible journey.
Yeah.
The Women is a book that stays with you long after you've finished reading it.
Oh, yeah.
It sparks conversations, challenges perspectives, and invites us to look at the world with more empathy and understanding.
And it's a testament to the power of storytelling. Stories have the ability to connect us, to heal us, to help us make sense of the world around us.
So to wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. How has The Women impacted you personally?
Yeah.
What resonated with you the most? What questions or reflections has it sparked for you?
We encourage you to share your thoughts and continue the conversation.
Yeah.
The beauty of a book like this is that it invites multiple interpretations and sparks meaningful discussions.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Kristin Hannah's The Women.
Yeah.
We hope you found it insightful and engaging.
And don't forget to check out the link in the description for a free audiobook.
Yeah.
There is a whole world of stories out there waiting to be discovered.
Thanks for listening to the Love Books Hate Reading podcast.